Welcome. Well, you're at home with Jim and Joy, and you are an important part of our EWTN family. And we are so delighted that you've welcomed us into your home. Today, we would love to hear from you, so we'd love to hear your comments. We're also taking questions. If you're watching, it's Monday and it's a live broadcast. Please give us a jingle at 1-800-221-9460. If you are calling and you are outside North America, please reach us at 205-271-2980. And you can always send us an email with a question or a comment to jimandjoy@ewtn.com, and check us out on Facebook. Well, today's question is this: why does motherhood matter to you and to the world? And you would think, why do we even have to ask this question? Well, we do. The history of every human being passes through the threshold of a woman's motherhood, and that is by Pope St. John Paul II, Mulieris Dignitatum. And that is, that quote identifies you. You came from someone. You belong to someone. And maybe even your birth mom placed you up for adoption, but you came from a woman. Yeah. And that needs to be reiterated yet again in our culture, because we seem to have lost our way yet again. And I pray that you all had a blessed Mother's Day.
Why don't you share a little bit
It was
about
a
your
fun
Mother's
weekend.
Day?
Yeah, Friday night we went out to dinner with old friends that we hadn't seen since COVID, so it was like a year and a half. That was something. And then on Saturday, Anna and Rebecca, as we have done in the past,
our twin daughters,
we gathered together, just the two of us, for lunch. The three of us, the two girls, and it's really lovely. And we just nonstop talking and laughing and being together, and then we exchange all our gifts. And then it is our tradition that our children, our daughters and our sons, stay with their wives and do Mother's Day at home. And Rebecca was like, well, don't you want to come over? And I was like, you know what? I did Mother's Day. I wore all my noodle necklaces that I was supposed to wear. My children bought me, back in the day, some really crazy outfits that I wore. I wore them to church with my noodle necklaces.
Only mothers do that.
Those days are over. And so it's like, no, go on.
And you heard from
children.
your two sons, Matthew and Wesley. We have Matthew, Anna and Rebecca, and then Wesley James.
Yes.
So your children, those are your
Heard
children.
from everybody, all my beautiful
have
babies.
Married and have children. And just there's nothing like the wonder of the family, the joy of family, as well as the sorrows and the hurts and the pains and the losses. It's worth the risk. Marriage, welcoming children, adopting, foster care, consecrating yourself to be a spiritual mother, the religious life to mother in that way. It's all worth it. It's worth the pain. It's worth the risk.
It's worth the sacrifice.
To be a husband, to be a wife, to be a mother, to be a father. And this question today is, we want to hear from you. It's a very important one. Why does motherhood matter? Just think of the context. For you personally, why does motherhood matter? Your own mom, being a mother, mothering, nurturing, welcoming human life, spiritual mothers. Why does it all matter? And of course, it's amazing we have to ask that question, but we're in a culture and a society now where it becomes incorrect to say the word mother or feminine or the female sex. The uniqueness of every person, people are trying to obliterate that or efface that. Why does motherhood matter? We need to understand that as human beings and as Catholic people, and to promote the sanctity of motherhood. Why does motherhood matter to you and to the world? Call us now. Send us an email. We want to hear from you. You make this show. Very important question. And all together, may we build a new culture of life and of marriage and the family. 1-800-221-9460. Give us a call. We'll be right back. Plenty more to come. Don't go away.
remember that today we're taking your comments on our live show. So if you're watching, please give us a jingle at 1-800-221-9460. If you are calling and you are outside North America, please reach us at 205-271-2980. And you can always send us a comment or a question to Jim and Joy at ytsync-en.com and check us out on Facebook. And this is the question: why does motherhood matter to you and to the world?
Yeah.
And I know that the whole world needs a mother. The whole world. And as I was journeying into the Catholic Church and really understanding more of our Blessed Mother, I mean, I had a moment where I was really trying to place Mary in my Protestant framework. And it really became apparent to me that the whole world needs a mother. And you may not have had the best mother on the planet. Yeah. Maybe she was sickly. Maybe she passed away. Maybe she wasn't there for you emotionally. Whatever the deal was, Jesus, in his divine authority and wisdom, said, I have my mother for
Amen.
you. And our Blessed Mother can fill in all of the cavities in your soul and heal and mend and repair you.
We have with us Joy Debbie Cowden, EWTN Digital Media Specialist, former producer of At Home with Jim and Joy.
That's right, she started us out.
Precious and dear friend, that whole family, the Cowden family and the kids. And so, Debbie, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear
All
me?
right. Well, great to have you here. And you came to mind when we were thinking about the question of the day: why does motherhood matter to you and to the world? And we wanted you to share from your own perspective what's on your heart regarding that question.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. I always enjoy talking to you. And, you know, the Cowdens have been in full swing with gardening, landscaping, and enjoying all of the flowers that have already bloomed. And first of all, I think that Dave is well on his way to becoming a master gardener. I just tell him what colors I like, what flowers I like, and then he goes to town making everything work together. And I found that the gardening analogy has been fitting with the gospel readings lately, where Jesus is talking about being the vine and we're the branches and how to remain in him. And it got me thinking about also how that relates to motherhood and why that matters. But I'll try to spare you all of the analogies, but there are a couple that I did want to hit on. There's the obvious analogy that in motherhood we have to remain close to Christ because God is the author of life. And if we don't remain in a state of grace, then we can't possibly have life at all. And then, like they say in the Gospels, we end up getting cut off and burned. So literally burned, and also figuratively. But in motherhood, we're called to bear fruit. And you think about it, that's the reason that plant life exists. But flowers aren't just nice to smell and look at and put in a bouquet to give to your mom on Mother's Day. The flowers have a purpose. And not every plant that has flowers is going to bear literal fruit like strawberries, apples, and tomatoes. But all of the flowers still play a really important role in feeding pollinators, continuing the existence of the plant species, feeding people and wildlife, repelling bad bugs like what marigolds do to aphids, and literally sustaining life across the world. And so in the same way, as mothers, we have to bear fruit in our own spiritual lives and in our role as mothers. And so when you ask, why does motherhood matter? Well, it matters because all of humanity depends on it. And St. John Paul says that all of humanity passes through the life of the mother. And so whether we're biological mothers or adoptive or spiritual, we are called, all of us are called, to serve the souls that are entrusted to us and to nurture them so that they can bear fruit. And that's, again, whether or not you have children of your own. You think about how bees fly from flower to flower in a garden, and the pollen from the flower spreads and become new flowers. Well, if you can imagine, if pollination didn't happen anymore, then there would be catastrophic consequences for the entire planet. And the same thing goes with motherhood. If women just drop their roles as moms and as nurturers and as spiritual guides, then I think all of humanity is in big trouble. And so, Jim and Joy, I figured that in light of Mother's Day and in light of this being a season of growing, I would share some of my thoughts on how we as moms and as God's little flowers can take care of ourselves to make sure that we're bearing our own fruit in motherhood. So the first is to remain in the sun, like SON, because that's how we know that plants can't live without sunlight and we can't live without the light of Christ. We also need sacramental graces that are like water to a plant. And so if we don't have the graces of the 7 sacraments, and if we don't have water, that life-giving water, then our souls will shrivel up and die. We also have to make sure that we're pruning the weak and the dead parts of our lives. So I was just having a conversation with my mom about how the way to get the most tomatoes on your plant is to prune the vine so that you have only 1 or 2 strong shoots. And if you cut off the rest of the shoots, it seems counterintuitive, but ironically, keeping the weaker shoots on your plant produces less fruit because it pulls the energy away from the strong parts of the plant. So in your own lives, we have to try not to do everything or we won't be good at anything, and we should focus on what's most important in our lives instead of spreading ourselves too thin. We also have to get some good spiritual fertilizer. Just like plants need different ratios of nutrients based on what their species are, and that could be making sure that you're getting prayer time by yourself, exercise, spiritual reading, maybe you need a spiritual director. And as unpleasant as it sounds, I think this is one of the most important things, that the best way to get amazing plants and produce is to use compost and worms. So you think about it, dead plants, food scraps, manure, all of those yucky things really help to produce the best plants. So you embrace all of the unpleasant things in life, the suffering that you're going through, death, hard times, because God uses those yucky things to bring about new life and the goodness of life. And then the final thing is time. Dave and I planted some tulip bulbs in the fall, and we didn't get to see the flowers come up until the spring after a really harsh winter. After the cold, we couldn't see anything that was going on, but God was at work, and he was creating these hundreds and hundreds of beautiful tulips. So in motherhood as well, we need to allow God's work, and that takes time. So those are my spiritual tips and my reasons for why motherhood is important, and also a couple gardening tips as well.
You're so wonderful. Thank you, beautiful Debbie, mother of 3 right now.
Thank you so much for your thoughts and reflections, and I love you putting forth what I call the principle of multiplication that is so clear in the Holy Scriptures: spiritual multiplication, human multiplication. This is God's heart, that we have a fecund, a fruitful God, and we are called to be a fruitful people. Thank you so much, Debbie.
Love you. Well, everything that she said was true, spot on. And I loved especially, one thing that I've learned about mothering, and she's in the early stages of being a mom, but the one thing that is constant is change in motherhood. The stages of your children and their ages and the phases of parenting them changes.
Yeah.
Jesus is constant. And going and having your quiet time, being with the Son, the S-O-N, the Son of God, your intimate union with Jesus. Through all of those times, that is where everything is going to happen. Where you're going to get pruned in the garden, where he's going to cultivate your soil, where the things that he has to cut off, the sufferings and the trials that we go through as mothers, being a mother-in-law, marrying off your children, getting them off to college. I mean, all of those passages that we go through as a mother is constantly changing, constantly. And so you're always becoming somebody else.
That's it. Question of the day: why does motherhood matter to you and to the world, to the whole world? Why does motherhood matter in terms of our own theology? Why does motherhood matter in terms of the vocation of motherhood? And I love what Debbie shared. We want to hear from you. Call us, email us now, be a part of the conversation. I can't move off of the importance of understanding as a human being that we're called to be fruitful. And there's almost a population free fall in our society, and an animus against children and welcoming children, bearing children, and against marriage and so on. I don't want to go to the negative part of it, because the church just simply needs to be the church and lift up fruitfulness, fecundity in spirituality, the work of evangelization. And we need to embrace that and understand the purpose of marriage, not only for our mutual joy and benefit, but for the procreation of children and raising them in the fear and the admonition of the Lord, for the continuation of the species, of our race, of human beings. And Debbie's, maybe that's the way you do it, a Debbie Cowden, a Dave Cowden, speaking about the sacrifice and the joy of marriage and passing that on generation to generation to generation, no matter what this contemporary culture is saying, that people would see the joy of marriage and the blessing of children.
And the richness of family. And, you know, there's suffering, there's sacrifice, and the beauty of it, how rich you become throughout it all. It says, we had a comment from someone, it said, motherhood matters because we are obeying God and being open to life. What is more beautiful than cooperating with God's creation? And that's Martha on Facebook. Yes, I know that the privilege for me in being a mom was to participate with God Almighty and growing babies in my womb. I mean, that's a miracle unto itself, the miracle of life. And to see that as a blessing and not a burden, that no child, be they unplanned, be they unwanted, is a mistake. They are always wanted by God. And you can say, and you have to become selfless on this journey. And so we have a phone call, and this is Valley, and Valley is calling from Florida. Valley, your question or your comment, and welcome to At Home with Jim and Joy.
Thank you. I love you both, and I love you all at EWTN. I thank God for our Catholic faith and for this beautiful programming. My comment this afternoon actually, is that we have always been taught that another word for mother is love. And in the scripture, we're told that God is love. So my thought that came as you asked that beautiful question, why motherhood, is that before we could even understand who God is and who Jesus is, our mothers were showing us all along the love of God in our lives. You know, and I was brought up in Long Island, New York. We're in Florida now, but my mother was not an especially religious person. It was because of my father, who was an immigrant, who came over from Italy, who made sure he wanted us to go to Catholic school. And my mother didn't really have a working knowledge of the Catholic faith, but she grew along with us through the Catholic school experience. And she came to love and cherish the Word and the sacraments. And she was like Jesus with skin on for us.
Yes.
And that was the love of God in my life. You know?
Beautiful.
Thank you, Valley.
Thank you. She hit the nail on the head again. Is that motherhood is about love, especially about agape love, God's unconditional, searching love. And, you know, Joy, I was thinking as we thought about this question of the image of the pelican feeding her offspring. That image is on a number of altars, and the one shrine of the Most Blessed Sacrament up in Hansville. So, well, what's the pelican with the children? And I think, you know, I think that may even predate Christianity. But, you know, there's that legend, or whatever it might be, that the pelican will pick herself, pluck her own flesh and blood to feed it to her offspring if there's no food available for them. To bless them. Of course, we know that that's our Lord. This is my body, this is my blood given to you. And Joy, that so typifies motherhood for me, that willingness to sacrifice unto your own death. And those, you know better than I know, and women know too, it could be a near-death experience to have a child. You know, the whole 9 months, what takes place, the complications, and some women might lose their life in the midst of motherhood and bearing a child, never mind rearing the child. But you know, a woman has a special hearing of those words from the Lord. It has an opportunity. It's different, of course, but she can say, this is my body given for you. This is my blood shed for you. A woman gives her flesh and her blood for the sake of another human being. Guys don't understand that, you know, inside and carrying a child. How great is motherhood?
It is great. We have another comment. It says, to me, motherhood at its best is godly nurturing. A woman to look up to who gives godly counsel. A woman who loves and protects a child. A good role mother like Mother Angelica. That's right. And this is Julie on Facebook. And Mother Angelica, right? She never had any physical children. No children grew in her womb. But she certainly birthed many children from this beautiful network, right? And she became a spiritual spiritual mother to so many. And even the network was airing so many of her
Yeah,
shows over the
that's great.
weekend, which we so
Yeah.
loved. And she's constantly teaching you. She's constantly giving you life. And not life for yourself, but life for God's sake. That God would live more in you and you would live less in you. And that's always the journey. That's always the exchange, that we become holy men and women of God until our dying breath. And it's going to cost you something. Increase your virtues, decrease your vices.
Well, thanks so much for your participation. May God bless the gift of femininity, of women, of motherhood, biological, foster care, adoption, and spiritual. May there be a great renaissance and outpouring
Yes,
of the
Lord.
gift of motherhood. We'll be right back. Plenty more to come. Please don't go away.
Welcome back. Well, before we wrap up today's show, we're going to go straight to Rome to check in with beautiful Joan Lewis. Now, Joan, what are your thoughts on today's topic?
Well, hi, Jim and Joy, and a very belated happy Mother's Day. I was extraordinarily blessed to have my mom for 67 years. She died just short of the age of 94. So how do I summarize a long, very beautiful life, what she meant to me in just a few minutes? Of course, that's impossible. But how would I define my mom? I would have to say faith, family, and flowers. Mom and Dad were both terrific gardeners, did beautiful things in the homes they owned, and that can be a topic certainly for another day. But you really couldn't know my mom without thinking of those words, faith, family, and flowers. And of course, faith was everything. The importance of Mass, to the point of going out of the way on road trips, I can remember this, to find a Catholic church for Sunday Mass. Grace before and after meals, Mom's daily rosary, her own set of prayer cards, and by the way, I've inherited those very dog-eared prayers to St. Clare, to St. Francis, to the Sacred Heart, because that was her great love. Now, we kids used to talk of Mom's shrine, of course. This was a small area in my parents' bedroom that had some religious statues, a couple of relics, a beautiful painting of the Sacred Heart. And of course, there were family photos, because family was her other outstanding love. This was a shrine to family love. Now, on the nightstand next to my bed here in Rome, I have in one of the drawers perhaps 30 or 40 prayer books, large and small, some very old, some very new. Well, 2 days ago, unexpectedly, I came across two books I totally forgot that I had owned. And one of them is my prayer book. It is inscribed to my wife Louise, with love, Bill, and it's Christmas of 1962. And the interesting thing is, on the front page, this is the 1953 edition of an original 1908 printing, and on the first of the 720 pages, there are words of blessing by Pope Pius XI in a letter written, I'm glad you're sitting down, written on May 10th, 1927. Today's May 10th. But the prayers, the indulgences, the history, oh, this book is just extraordinary. It's mesmerizing. And I wonder how many men gift their wives on special occasions with something like a prayer book. So I inherited Dad's many prayer books. And here's another extraordinary little volume. This is a very soft, almost a suede leather. It's from 1880, the English translation of a book called Gold Dust. I have cherished this for years. Now, by the way, the other book that I did find unexpectedly a few days ago was a small volume I gave my mother 52 years ago on Mother's Day, called Mothers are Very Special People. Can you believe it? All those years ago. So, yes, my mom, define her, faith, family, and flowers. Mothers, where would we be without them? I think you all have the answer to that. Time's up. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Joan. That was absolutely beautiful. Your own family and your mom, and you shared so wonderfully, and you yourself mother many. And so we lift up once again the radical and wonderful nature of women, of motherhood, biological, foster care, adoption, spiritual moms. May there be a great renewal, a great remembering of the wonder of motherhood. And so you are blessed in the Lord, every mother of whatever type and kind. You're an important part of this family with Jesus as our head and Mary, our mother. Isn't it wonderful to be a Christian? Isn't it grand to be a Catholic? Isn't it something to look forward to be in the forever family of God? Keep it on EWTN. You're never alone. You're always at home with Jim and with Joy. Bye now.